1799 BC, 2096 AM. In this year died the very first man born after the flood, Arphaxad, the firstborn of Shem. He was born 2 years after the flood and was 438 years at his death. His father Shem was still alive, of pre-flood pedigree, 538 years old. This was 1872 years, 144 times 13 of the Jewish calendar, 1 Genesis. 1787 BC, 2108 AM. At age 60, Isaac fathered Jacob and Esau, twins. Both of these males will grow up to have whole nations descended from them that will struggle against one another even as empires rise and fall, descended from both. The three major ethnic groups descended from Abraham are the Arabic nations that have populated the Middle East, from their patriarch Ishmael, who was 74 years old at the birth of Jacob and Esau. Esau's descendants will populate Seir, and some will assimilate with Middle Eastern nations, but the thread of Esau and his hatred of his brother Jacob will find its way to live among the Chittim of Italy, bred into the Roman people, the greatest enemies of Israel. This history will be disclosed fully in this research. The descendants of Jacob will populate the earth in the most fascinating series of migrations in the ancient world, when Israelite tribes and clans become nations and empires. The threads of Ishmael, Esau, and Jacob are followed throughout this work. Abraham in this year is 160 years old, 40 times 4. Shem is 550 years old. God promised to Isaac the same covenant between Abraham and him, this being 90 years after the institution of the Abrahamic covenant, or 1080 months. The Roman historian and chronologist Marcus Varro, as cited by Augustine, related that at this exact time Assyria was ruled by its seventh king, the first Xerxes, who also went by the throne name Balaeus. At this time the first king of Argos ruled, namely Inachus. Argos would later be known as part of Mycenae. Inachus is probably a corruption of Anak, Inachus. The Anakim first settled the Peloponnese after being banished by Nimrod with the Japhethites. In the 3rd century BC, Apollonius of Rhodes, chief custodian of the Library at Alexandria, wrote that the ancient lands of Greece were ruled by the sons of Deucalion. Deucalion was the new wine sailor, the early Greek Noah, and his sons were born after the flood, called the Anakim. When Nimrod led the Hamites against the Japhethites and sons of Noah, he did so after they were already weakened by a disaster, a quake and storm in 1947 BC. They were defeated and banished to the far west, from which the term Tartarus developed. Evidence that Inachus is Anak is found in that the early Greeks claim that Inachus arrived at Argos in a migration escaping a disaster. Even the alliance between the Japhethites' Titans and the people of Inachus is found in that Inachus was associated with Iapetos, who was the Grecian Japheth. Inachus also founded Iopolis, known today as Antioch in Syria. We will review material later showing that the Anakim were also inhabiting Caria and Syria. The city called Argos was not called Argos at this time, a name that will be attributed to it much later. 1 Genesis, 2 Augustine, City of God, 3 Survivors of Atlantis, 4 Survivors of Atlantis, 5 The Greek Myths. 1777 BC, 2118 AM. After 66 years, 792 months north of the ecliptic, the ancient Earth-killer comet group passes back over the ecliptic on its 396-year orbit. 1776 BC, 2119 AM. 4 years before the death of Nimrod, Assyrian Ninurtu, the Assyrians laid the foundation for the immense temple complex dedicated to Anu and Adad, the gods of heaven and storms, enjoying their newly acquired autonomy. This is 641 years to Tiglath-Pileser's first year of reign in 1135 BC, when this ruined temple was rebuilt and planet Phoenix darkened the sun. By 1135 BC, the Assyrian annals indicate that the temple had been in ruins for 60 years. 772 BC, 2123 AM. Rumours of the rise of a mighty hunter in Canaan filtered into the court of Amraphel in Babylon, Nimrod's palace. Nimrod is stirred to jealousy, for he was the original mighty hunter. Nimrod and his personal guards go hunting in the Hule Marsh in Canaan, a pretext for finding the young upstart. As Nimrod separates himself from the men in the hunt, he is himself ambushed by 15-year-old Esau, who was disguised in a boar skin. Esau fights Nimrod, drops the huge king, and decapitates him with his own sword, fulfilling the prophecy that Nimrod would be killed by the seed of Terah, father of Abraham. Nimrod was 215 years when he died. Nimrod's men chased Esau and the youth flees, running all the way back to where Isaac has pitched his tent. When he arrives, he finds his brother Jacob cooking a pot of food. Exhausted from his flight and scared, he trades his birthright for the pot of stew to Jacob. Esau killing Nimrod is the origin for one of the most mysterious and widespread mythological motifs. The boar killing the king story, so prolific in antiquity, a story with variants found in the Middle East, Africa, Asia Minor, Greece, India, and Europe. This is the subject of King of the Giants, mighty hunter of world mythology. Though hundreds of versions of this story are found in Asia, Africa, and Europe, not one single story like this is found in the ancient Americas. In fact, the traditions of early American cultures remember the mighty hunter, his lies, his fall and pride, and even the flood and tower, but none relate how he died. This lends credit to the fact that those people who became the early Americans had already left the Near East, and all contact was for a long time severed with the Old World. After crossing natural land bridges, these passes were then closed over by impassable oceans, as the polar caps melted and receded to their present positions. The death of Nimrod was 127 years after the Tower disaster and beginning of the dispersion. The following year, 1771 BC, begins the first regnal year of Queen Semiramis of Babylon, a woman famous in the writings of the early Near East. Her generation were just reaching old age, as evidenced by the death of Arphaxad. However, her own genetics may have been stronger, for she was the direct daughter of both Noah and Namar, rather than their grandchild. The ruse of masquerading as a pig was used much in antiquity to get the predatory animals like lions or wolves to think the hunter was a foraging pig. The predator would advance on the hunter and then be killed. This is the 175th year of Abraham, and he dies after Nimrod is killed. He was born in the first regnal year of King Nimrod in 1947 BC. Nimrod was a Hamitic king under the curse of Noah. His death was 240 years, 86,400 days, after the golden age of Cronus began, when Ham became king in 2012 BC. 1 Jesher. 1769 BC, 21:26 AM. Salah dies, aged 433 years, of Shemitic lineage, born 37 years after the flood. In this year Jacob, 18 years old, moves into the house of Shem, who was 568 years old. By this time Japheth is dead, as well as Ham, leaving Shem as the oldest man on the planet, born 98 years before the flood. Jacob is the student of the ancient Shem, Melchizedek, just as Abraham was the student under Noah. This was the 108th year since the establishment of the Abrahamic covenant in 1877 BC, 1 Genesis. 1737 BC, 21:58 AM. Shem, the patriarch of all Semitic peoples, at age 600, died. His death ends the ancient Ogdoad, the 8 ancient ones, being Noah and Namar, Japheth, Ham and Shem, with their 3 wives. Of antediluvian pedigree, he did not grow old as others did after the deluge, cellular deterioration as we experience today unknown to them. This agelessness of the pre-flood people was why the biblical record describes Melchizedek as that he had no beginning and no end. His beginning was before the flood, and after the deluge he outlived his sons, grandsons, and great-grandsons. This was the 110th year of Isaac and the 50th year of Jacob and Esau, 1 Genesis.